Typically, the next part of the poster here, kind of on the upper left, would be a short, kind of abstract-like description of your project. It could be an actual abstract, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's often quite effective to use a model or a workflow you could put here instead of text. So some of you might be familiar with the idea of a graphical abstract, a way of kind of presenting your work in a graphical form. That's another possibility that you can consider here. It's really helpful in somewhere in this section of the poster to very clearly include your hypothesis or hypotheses or your objective. So make sure people understand what the hypothesis is that you're testing or what the objective is of your research. And I think it's best to just be very explicit about that. Then you want to frame the research problem. So why should the listener or the reader, if you're not there presenting the work, why should they care about what's on this poster? Again, can you summarize some of that with an illustration? And you might include here a description or an explanation of some of the methods if that turns out to be really important for people to understand before they can kind of move forward with thinking about how you did the work. The middle section is predominantly figures typically, or the results. And it might not be figures, there might be other ways that it makes sense to present the results of your work. Those figures typically should have a legend, but you do want to maintain a balance between the text and the figures. So you can keep the figure legends fairly small, but have them be legible. This is a place where you really need to adjust based on what the poster session is going to be like that you're going to. So if the only time people are going to see your poster is when you are standing next to it, then you can leave out some of the text. On the other hand, if the poster is going to be up for a longer period of time, or as is the case for the Vanderbilt Undergraduate Research Fair, you're entering your poster for judging, and the judges are going to judge it just by looking at the poster, not from talking to you, then you probably need to think about including a little bit more explanation so that somebody can actually follow along. Okay? I would recommend having a title for each box or figure. I often like to have the title of the figure actually give a sense of what the conclusion is, so that someone could really read each of those conclusions, and even if they don't have time to look at the figure in a lot of detail, they could get an overall picture of what you found. The kinds of rules that you want to think about for your figures are the same as you would really for any time you present your work. If you have a graph, make sure your axes are clearly labeled. Think about using colors that are friendly to people who might be colorblind, and think about trying to pick a way to present your data that's going to be somewhat intuitive to the audience. You might be aware that there are often multiple different ways to portray the same data, and you might want to try a couple different ways and think to yourself, like, which of these is easiest for someone to tell the story if they're looking at it fairly quickly. The results can continue on to panel 3, depending on how much you want to present. And then in the lower right-hand corner, or the right-hand column, you're going to want to present your conclusions. So what is the take-home? What are the main points you want people to remember from your poster? You might, again, want to bring in a model figure here. And then importantly, you should address future directions. So what experiments or approaches do you have planned for the future? Or if you're finishing up this project and moving on, perhaps what would the person coming in after you do to build on or to finish your project? What is the next logical step? This is something that people looking at your poster are going to be very interested in. And it's also a really good thing for you to be thinking about for your own project.